RuneScape has been the bane of my existence for many years, so naturally, the pixelated crack that comes through the screen of this video game has me fiending for RuneScape Nostalgia. RuneScape just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and to pay homage to this, Mod-Ash, one of the most senior developers at RuneScape, created an event that's packed full of references to the olden days of RuneScape. For this video, I just wanted to point out those references and expand on the historical context. If you've been playing for a long time, this will rekindle many memories for you, and if you haven't, you're going to learn a lot about the history of the game. We've got a lot to talk about, so buckle up. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I would appreciate if you considered subscribing. It's free, and I think it'll make me feel less empty inside. Also, we've been making RuneScape statues. If you'd like a Jad for your desk, none are in stock, but if you pre-order one, you can get 20% off using the coupon code JAD. It's limited to 15 uses, we don't make very many, but I really appreciate you guys. Here's a couple images, by the way, from people who did get one of our statues and shared them with us on social media. That's some cool stuff. Okay, let's get on with the video. So hands down, I think the thing that people love the most about this event is the old models that we get to see in the realm of memories. You've got the dragons, the scorpions, the demons, some goblins, orcs, trolls. Really nice to see those, but that's actually only a handful of them that originally existed in the game when they made the transition from RuneScape Classic to RuneScape 2 in 2004. If we take a look at the bestie area that was originally posted on the RuneScape website, we can see over 60 different NPC models. Really cool stuff, and the whole game was themed around this type of artwork between 2004 and late 2006. Just check out some of the differences in the scenery. Oak trees are nearly indistinguishable from normal trees, and maple trees and yew trees look completely different than what we know today. Even the bushes were different back then. And how long has it been since you killed a cow that looked like this? It's actually been about 15 years, believe it or not. The last image I want to show you of these old models is just this picture of a guy trading. All the items in his inventory and all the items in the trade window look completely different than they do today. The logs are so weird. The runes, the herbs, everything. But if you've been playing since RuneScape Classic, you probably don't agree with me because these don't look weird to you. You've probably picked up on the fact that actually these look like they did back in RuneScape Classic from 2001 until 2004. Keeping that original theme alive was definitely a priority of theirs when they made this transition from 2.5D graphics of RuneScape Classic into true 3D graphics when they released RuneScape 2 in 2004. And so most of the models bear resemblance of those in RuneScape Classic. But as they approached 2007, they updated most of these models to a newer, more complex version, and that's what lives in the game to this day. At least for the most part. There is still a couple old models laying around in the game, like the Black Knight Titan from the Holy Grail quest is still using the original giant model. Within the realm of memories, Mod-Ash managed to work in many little Easter eggs. Here's one, the sleeping bag. Back on RuneScape Classic, they introduced a fatigue system as an anti-botting measure. You would have to sleep and enter a CAPTCHA to reset your fatigue before you could gain experience again. I did an entire video on how people used to cheat this system. It's nice to see it here so we can rekindle that memory, and I especially like the attention to detail. When you actually use the sleeping bag, it turns your screen black, which is similar to the original. Of course, they didn't put the full original sleeping bag interface in here. I think that would just be too much work for the event. But what Mod-Ash didn't miss is the text for when you finish sleeping. It says you wake up feeling refreshed, which is the original text from RuneScape Classic. He then alludes to the fact that that fake mock interface is missing the CAPTCHA by saying it felt a little easier than it used to. There's all sorts of discontinued NPCs running around the realm of memories. Poise Pete is one of them, and this is by far my favorite. This guy ran a random event known as Poise Pete's Candle Lighting that was released in February of 2006, and it only existed in the game for a few months because the Jagex moderators quickly realized people didn't understand how to complete the event, and so they were getting trapped inside of this guy's church. There's no known video recording of this random event taking place, but we do have a few images from old guide websites. The idea is that players would light the long candles, the ones that hadn't been burnt before, and that's how they would complete the event. And Poise Pete's candle lighting was among the class of random events known as gift givers. Upon completion, you would get some bones, a gem, or maybe even the loop half of a key if you're lucky. Now, one thing that makes this event more famous than all the others is that people who dig around in parts of the game that maybe they shouldn't be, managed to take a peek into the area of where this event originally took place using the Orb of Oculus. You can see here the church. It still exists today in RuneScape 3, and it's actually right beside where the Gravedigger random event takes place. Now, this one I'm not fully sure about, but I think I've got the reference right. There's all these heroic statues around, and they've all got the same generic examine text, except this one. This one says it's a memorial to an old knight, and I think this might be a reference to the famous player from days gone by, the Old Knight. You remember back then when we were all kids and famous players were idols that we looked up to, people that we wanted to be? He was one of them. He rose to fame because of his high rank in the game. For years he was either rank 1 or actively battling for rank 1 on the high scores. And unlike most famous players of that era, he was known as being friendly. He would always respond when you said hello and even start a conversation if you happened to be skilling alongside of him. Unfortunately, shortly after maxing his RuneScape account, he died from colon cancer in 2006. There's actually a statue in the wilderness that predates his death, but players have adopted it as a memorial for him as a player. So if this statue is indeed a reference to the Old Knight, and I'm going to tweet Mod Ash and see, then this is the first real statue we have that was purposely put into the game as a memorial for him. That's really nice to see. One reference we can't get away from is the green gnome that is front and center of this event. And once you get into the realm of memories, you also get to see some of the green gnome cheerleaders. So back in the days of RuneScape Classic, all gnomes were green, and some of these references even still live in the game to this day. So if you happen to be that one person that still plays the gnome restaurant minigame, when you're talking to Blueberry, if he ever instructs you to bring him the drink, the short green guy, he will actually make mention not to bring him an actual gnome. And that's because this drink, of course, is a reference to their green skin, as it was released in 2002 when gnomes were still green. This next one, while still an interesting tidbit, serves more to show how involved Mod Ash is with the community. So back in the classic days, instead of having the banknote system that we know and love today, there was a bunch of NPCs known as Surters, and you would bring your items to them and they would convert them into a form of banknotes that you could then trade in bulk easily. It was a long and tedious process. You would have to go back to them if you wanted to unsert them into items. So eventually it got replaced with the banknote system, but there was a bunch of different NPCs that would do sorting for various items. Mod Ash put one specific into the game known as Chuck, and he would do sorting for logs. But the reason why this one was put into the event is because Mod Ash remembered a player specifically asking for this NPC to be put back into the game in some way. So you can see No Name McGee's original tweet from October asking Mod Ash if he can be put back into the game in some way. And then after the event got released, No Name McGee was so excited he went back to Twitter and thanked Mod Ash for putting this NPC back into the game. And Mod Ash replied saying, "Was it you that contacted me months ago asking for him to be brought back in some form? Someone did." If this doesn't highlight how awesome of a person Mod Ash is, I don't know what does. Throughout this video, I've been showing you some footage of RuneScape Classic, and I've been using a project known as OpenRSC Classic to do that. It's an open source project that's dedicated to preserving RuneScape Classic now that Jagex has officially shut down the Classic servers, but one of the administrators on their log put it best. As long as Mod Ash is working at Jagex, there's at least one guy who truly understands the soul of RuneScape. Now, this one isn't so nostalgic because we still see it every time we log in, but the actual doorways here are actually the arches and pillars and flames from the login screen. And a nice little touch is that you can actually see the runes in these flames, just like on the login screen. If you've ever looked carefully, as the flame burns, you can see different runes being outlined within them. A nice little touch is the three gods on the south side of this room. This is a direct reference to the three strange watchers who are actually Zamorak, Guthix, and Saradomin, respectively, in the Mime event. If you actually turn your camera out to look towards the audience, you'll see them there. But what this really reminds me of is Noob Show, when they were doing all those videos about the RuneScape gods that were so famous way back in the day. Another one of the discontinued NPCs that was brought back is Thander. This guy has an interesting history. Back in the days of RuneScape Classic, there was actually female and male specific versions of armor, and you couldn't wear them unless they were of your respective gender. And so to be able to convert this armor back and forth between genders, they had Thander, a blacksmith who was located in Varrock, just south of the Eastern Bank. He would do the conversions for free, and this is just a nice little nod towards those super old players of RuneScape who would have actually used this guy's services. This next NPC, Big Mo, isn't so old. He existed on RuneScape for the month of May in 2015, and per the lore he came from Zaya. This was before Zaya was ever even released into the game, but for each day, if you managed to find Big Mo, he would be in a random location, he would sell you a clue scroll of a random tier for just 50 GP. And that about sums it up for the nostalgia that I found and wanted to point out in this event. This was really a beautiful event for the 20th anniversary, and it was executed so well. While many of these old references have been gone from the game for over a decade, they've still lived on in our memories as part of our childhoods, and it's nice to see them again in the game so we can relive some of that. And if you want to be reminded of RuneScape on a daily basis, you can get a JAD for your desk, 20% off right now if you don't mind waiting a few months while we finish making them. Just use the coupon code JAD on checkout or the link in the description. It's limited to 15 uses. We don't make very many of them. We cast each one from resin. They've got a really good weight to them. And there's a couple other items up for pre-order on the website right now too, if you're curious. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.